Hello, welcome to the DataVisualAItor Expo presentation. Today we'll be covering some off-the-shelf AI solutions, a little bit different than some of the custom front-end solutions that we've seen today and elsewhere. We wanted to demonstrate some simplicity for AI in that anyone can go and pick this up with just the ChatGPT Plus license. It gives you a good feel for what AI could do and shows you some possibilities that you could then translate to your business or personal solutions. So we'll start off with our introduction video. This will give us a little bit of background on what we're going to go over today.
Welcome to this product demonstration presented by the DataVisualAItor team. Let's embark on a journey where conversational AI becomes your personal data scientist. Discover the ease of navigating through complex data sets, cleansing them and performing intricate statistical and correlation analyses, all using an intuitive dialogue with your AI. In this showcase, witness the power of transforming raw data into insightful visualizations designed to robustly support your hypothesis without the need for advanced data science skills. Make data-driven decisions confidently and independently with the power of conversational AI at your fingertips. Now, I'll turn it over to today's speakers to show it all in action.
All right, I have to let the song finish. So, as our introduction video stated, my name is Chris Andrews. I am a senior software solutions analyst here at Kingsmen, and I have a background in dealing with big data, working with Lean Six Sigma projects and process improvement. And it can be a huge undertaking to clean up data. Every system I've ever encountered has had bad data in it and requires that step regardless of what you're trying to accomplish. So what we're going to show today is how to speed up that process and streamline it so that anybody can approach analysis using AI. So what we'll show today is using conversational AI, we'll import and manage a data set, clean it up, perform some advanced statistical analyses, and create multiple visualizations. What we're trying to prove, we have a hypothesis or a theory. How much of an impact do interest rates have on housing prices in the US? Something that I think we can all kind of answer off the cuff right now, but we want to back it up and show some visualizations. And we will do that with our hands tied behind our backs, metaphorically. Because I still need to type a little bit, but our goal is to, as much as possible, use just voice prompts in ChatGPT to show the ease of the process. If we can convey it verbally, it's pretty easy to do for anyone to pick up and try. So that is where we will flip over to our demo, and we'll start kind of just talking about the data that we'll use. With AI analysis or any type of analysis with data, the data and its value is really important. So you don't want to use bad data because you're going to get a bad answer, even if you're using AI. So it's important to start with good data that you trust, and it even says it right here on the Fred website. Trusted data source since 1999.
It must be real.
It's got to be real. So this data comes from the St. Louis Federal Reserve website. And as you can see, 12,000 plus different categories under money, banking, and finance. A lot of really great data on this website. So we wanted to start here. We have a range of different treasury yields that will be our proxy for interest rates, since the two are connected. We also pulled the Case-Shiller Home Price Index to compare those interest rates against home prices. So there's a couple different ways to get data into ChatGPT or another AI solution. First and foremost, the most straightforward is an Excel upload, which is what we'll use today just for simplicity's sake. However, you can connect to the Fred website as well as other sites using an API. So if you're doing this regularly, you want to connect to a lot of different places for a site or multiple sites. That's where the API really shows its value, right? So as an example, we've got our different categories here for the Fred API, listing out all the different things you can do with that API, all the different types of data. So it is a kind of a wealth of information, and other sources have that as well. So now we'll flip over to our Mac GPT app, which is the native iOS app for ChatGPT. And we will utilize ChatGPT 4, which is only available right now with a Plus subscription. And there are a few different things you can do with that Plus subscription. I know the text is kind of small, but the one we have selected and we'll be using today is the Advanced Data Analysis beta. There are a few others you can use, but this allows us to write Python code without writing Python code, which is pretty neat, and does give us that advanced analytics that we'll be utilizing. So down here at the bottom of our chat bar, we see a little plus icon. We will grab our export that we have from Fred. So we have some varying treasury yield maturities and the home price index on here. And right now, we will start our voice prompts. So, shh, quiet, especially in the front row. I have the Excel document already loaded there, but we'll start with upload the document and show me a sample table of the data. And we'll give it a shot. So it's going to let us know exactly what it's doing. So it's starting with that upload of the Fred Data Monthly XLS. And it has finished upload. And now it will give us a little bit of the background on what it's finding in the data. And without us prompting at all, it already identified the Case-Shiller home price index.
How did it know that?
Columns, and the percentages for that index. And it lists out our different treasury yields, and it already identified they're likely to be U.S. Treasury securities rates with different maturity lengths, which is exactly correct. So unprompted, it has already made some predictions about the data and has taken some of the guesswork out of the process.
Chris, is this new? Because
when we the first time that it's that detailed.
Because the data is in the spreadsheet looking like the table.
Yep.
CS, HPI, etc., and GS1, GS2, GS5, but it's figured out that it's the Case-Shiller home price index, and those are treasury yields.
And great point, because this sample table is an amalgamation of each of these indexes from the Fred website. So this isn't like a standard format that this file usually looks like. We compiled these columns together for simplicity's sake for the demonstration. So it's already taken some guesswork out, which is great. It does advise that there are some columns that have null values. So because we're combining different data sets, some of them go back further in time than others. So that is something we'll consider. And anytime you're doing data analysis from multiple places and combining information, you're going to have something like this happen where something doesn't align and you do need to shift. So that is off to a great start here, but I'm a very visual person, so I really want to see how this looks initially without us adjusting anything yet. So we'll do that prompt. Show me a sample line graph, put the treasury yields on the primary y-axis, and put the home price data on the secondary y-axis. Let's give it a shot. And keep in mind, since we are doing voice prompts, voice prompting is not perfect. And I try to lean down so I get close to the microphone because this podium is pretty low.
Or you're too tall.
Or I'm too tall, that too. But as we all know from asking Alexis or Google or anything, you may get some funky answers if you don't proofread. We had a few in our first Expo presentations that were kind of funny. We went with it anyway, because it's nice for those that don't use ChatGPT or haven't seen much of it. At any point, you can revert back to a previous prompt, and it will allow you to re-prompt. It is very useful if you're going down a rabbit hole, you notice something in the data and you want to just keep asking questions, and an hour later, you don't even remember what you were trying to get to. You can then go back and pick up where you left off without losing your data. All right, so as I was talking, it gave us a pretty darn good sample data set here from the information. It is missing some of the labeling, and it's not exactly clear. We've got a couple of things that we don't know what they are, but for a first pass, that's pretty great.
It nailed the title.
Yeah, sure did. So for those that can't see, it says Treasury yields and home price index over time, which is exactly what we're trying to show here. So what we'll do, we'll now use a prompt and clean up some of the information, make it a little bit more clear. So let me do another prompt here. The data is a bit confusing. Rename columns GS1 to TY1, rename column GS5 to TY5, and continue that trend for the remainder of the Treasury yields. Rename CSHPI to home prices, and rename CSHPI underscore PCH to home price percentages. Also add labels for the lines to the graph. So I only noted 2 of the Treasury yield names, and we'll see if it's able to figure out the remaining pattern of the Treasury yields to show some of that predictive analytics that it does. So it is listing out each of the column renames right now, and it is doing exactly that. So it did predict that trend. GS2 is TY2, GS30 is TY30. So it did exactly what we were hoping it would do. So doing an activity like this regularly where you're cleaning up data, it can really speed up the process quite a bit. You don't have to go through and name every single thing that you want to rename or every single thing that you want to look at. And it is showing us a nice little example of that data. Those columns make much more sense now, even though it was able to infer exactly what the data was without us prompting it, which is pretty cool. So at any point where you're using ChatGPT, you can click this stop generating. So if it's listing out some things and you already have your answer and you want to keep prompting, you can interrupt it and go ahead and reprompt at any time. So now it's asking if we want to recreate a graph, which we won't do just yet. I want to also address the missing information that we have, so some of the labels on those lines, as well as addressing the missing data that it already identified. So because we are trying to do some analysis here, we want to make sure that for every time, every date that there is data on the home prices, that there's also data on the Treasury yields and vice versa, because if there's blank fields, those are essentially 0. So that will throw off the analysis. So let's start with that. Let's clean up the data, remove any rows that don't have data for all fields, and also on the graph, make sure that each line has a label on the legend. So there's one of those verbal
Rows.
issues. Remove any rows, as in the flower. So let's see if it's able to figure it out. Hopefully it will, based on context clues. And another thing to note is each time we see a gray box or a green box here with finished working or working, that is Python code happening in the background. So each of our relatively simplistic verbal cues is generating and writing Python. So ChatGPT is executing these in the background each time, and we're just seeing the simplified results. So pretty neat for anyone who does not write Python, but unlocks quite a bit of extra horsepower there for analyses. So it did, looks like it did remove some of the data. However, it still did not label our graph correctly. We have the home prices labeled, but not the lines for the primary y-axis, which we know, because we're familiar with the data set, is the Treasury yield lines. So right now, I have a pretty decent view of what that data represents. We at least have a general idea. So at this point, if you were new to this data, you could just visually prompt based on what you're seeing here. You could say, oh, I noticed this, why would that be? And it might give you an answer based on historical context, more of a qualitative answer. So next, let's start to do some analysis. So for those that aren't mathematicians or economists, you might have no idea what kind of analysis you want to do to get an answer here. So let's ask ChatGPT. What type of analysis would you do to compare the treasury yields to home prices over time? Over time, one word. And that's the great thing about a conversational AI. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to write Python code every time. You can ask it a simple question of, what do I do next? And it will at least give you a direction to go. When you ask a question like this, you're not writing Python code. You'll notice there's no boxes for that working or finished working that's going on in the background. It's really just using the language model to generate an answer. So this will give us quite a few different things to consider.
It's all about the Granger causality test.
It is all about Granger causality. So some that most people probably would have heard of, correlation or regression analysis. And then, as Kevin mentioned, Granger causality. Most people would not have ever heard of that. The neat thing is you can ask it to do that without really having background, and it will give you an answer, which is great. So conversational AI, gives you the ability to really bounce ideas off that you might otherwise have no idea what to ask Google in this situation. So it does give a good opportunity to expand your analytics. So to that point, though, we will start with something simple. Correlation analysis, really just compares two different things or two different sets of data and tells you how strongly they're correlated. Normally, it would take a data scientist or a mathematician to do something like that quickly, but we will do it right now with just a simple prompt. So let's start with a correlation analysis. Tell me which of the treasury yields has the strongest correlation to home prices over time. Maybe I need to increase the amount of time I pause between words, because it is starting to combine everything. But let's take a look at what it tells us. And while that Python is working hard in the background, one thing to note, as we go through this data, this is a fairly complex set of data, a lot of information, that you can infer from it, and it's a great tool. However, you do need to be cognizant that you are sending this data to OpenAI servers. If you're using plugins with ChatGPT, you're also opening it up to potentially other third parties as well. So you do need to keep that in mind. You don't want to be cavalier with your customer data. You don't want to input, customer credit card information or any personally identifiable information in here. ChatGPT doesn't save the information, but that data is still going to their servers and is flying through cyberspace. All right, so it did give us an answer. We'll take a quick look at that Python as well. So it did complete that correlation matrix of the clean data, and it gave us our answer. So it is showing right now that the Treasury yield 30-year has the strongest correlation to home prices over time, and states that that correlation is negative 0.41, and the negative value indicates an inverse relationship. So as we had seen from our beautiful chart here, we do notice that in general, as the Treasury yield lines decrease, the home price index increases. We notice a few times where that is not true, and we will visit that later and ask what ChatGPT thinks about that. But for right now, let's keep going down and pulling that thread of the 30-year yield. So one of the other types of analysis it suggested was a regression analysis. So it suggested performing that to understand how changes in Treasury yield might predict changes in home prices, which is exactly what we're trying to show. So let's start going down that path. Next, let's perform a linear regression. Is the Treasury yield 30 maturity still the strongest relationship to home prices over time? I'm not going to fix that over time anymore.
Chris, can you go back up to the correlation and just
Sure.
read that section for a second?
Yeah.
As it's working.
All right, so starting.
No, I'm sorry. Back in the descriptions.
Oh yeah, the description.
Yeah.
So correlation.
Because you mentioned linear regression there. So if you look at the regression there, it says the next one, number 2. Perform a regression analysis to understand how changes in treasury yields might predict change in home prices. Both simple linear regression if focusing on a single treasury yield maturity, and multi-regression if focusing on including various maturities. That's why we're doing the linear. Just want to point that out.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and it does give you some good detail around each of these different analyses and why it's recommending them. So at any point, you can also ask it, hey, give me some more details on correlation analysis and why that might be applicable. So it does help break down some of those barriers. Let's ask to show our correlation, but let's try to introduce some lag. So as a treasury yield rate changes, how long does it take for it to impact home prices? Does it take a month for it to kind of feel that ripple effect through the market, or does it take longer? As people are considering purchasing homes, it's not a quick decision usually, so there may be some lag there. So let's go down that path. Let's focus on just the treasury yield 10-year. Let's delete all other treasury data from our data set and perform another regression comparing only the treasury yield 10-year to the home prices over time, and show me a new graph. Let me remove some of the extra words in there. All right, so pretty neat. It's given us what we've asked for here. It does give us the ability to have some pretty cool visuals just with a few prompts. So I kind of led it a little bit in asking for these 2 types of analyses and visualizations. So one thing you can always ask is, give me some other things that I may not know to ask. So let's just try to have it recommend some other visualizations. I don't know what else to show. Can you recommend and demonstrate 3 other visualizations that show the relationship between the 10-year treasury yield and home prices over time? Right.
Certainly.
Very eager to help.
You've never said please yet, Chris.
I have not.
Your AI overlord is going to be mad at you.
I want to make sure it knows who's in charge. And now it is referencing a few things that we have not asked yet. So scatter plot with a regression line, residual plot, and time series plot with dual axis. So let's see what it shows us. Let's see what it's doing with that Python code.
Oof.
Yeah, so now since we're asking for multiple different visualizations, it is going into quite a bit of detail here as it submits that Python code in the background. And let's take a look. So scatter plot showing that relationship. So as you can see, pretty strong relationship between the two. A lot of these values pretty grouped up in that trend line. Residual plot, which I have not used yet, so I'm not familiar, but we do see some grouping.
That's the amount that's not predicted. So if you use like sum of the squares of the difference, that shows. So like if you have the first one, the first chart, right? So the values way at the top, those are outliers. Showing those outliers. Yeah.
And then last one being just a graph of those 2 different data sets that we've asked for. So eliminating all of the extra data for those treasury yields, letting us kind of focus in on the details. So it does go into some descriptions on our different visualizations. So you can continue to go down one of those paths if you so choose. But definitely a couple interesting points off just a few prompts. So with that said, we will flip back over to our presentation and talk through kind of what the next steps are beyond just these, simple prompts using only ChatGPT. So let me bring this back up here. So expanding that functionality with ChatGPT Plus. So as we showed today, you can leverage AI solutions and enhance analytical skill sets. Even without a lot of experience, you can get some pretty neat results and help you prove your hypotheses. It does make it a little bit more approachable. You don't have to be afraid to ask a question or waste a colleague's time. Data scientists are few and far between, so you might not want to sit there and bounce ideas off of them. But the good thing is you can run through ChatGPT, grab a piece of Python code and say, hey, data scientist, this is what I got using ChatGPT. It gave me kind of in the realm of what I'm looking for, but can you expound upon it? I want to go down this path. And that gives you a better starting point than starting from nothing, right? Because it kind of breaks down some of that fundamental barrier between the two kind of vernaculars, right? It helps you make decisions faster as well, right? You don't have to wait on someone else for an answer necessarily. You can do your own analyses. And can reduce tedious tasks like getting rid of blank rows of data, aligning dates, whatever it might be. So we did utilize the advanced data analyses portion of ChatGPT 4, but as I mentioned, we have some other options as well. So the plugin store is a great spot to start and explore different things that it can do. Right now, I think it has over 1,000 different plugins available from third-party sites. As you could guess, some are great and some are not. So you can pick and choose and try different things out and see what works for you. There are a couple cool plugins where you could directly translate this to a presentation and say, hey, throw these graphs onto a presentation and be on your way. So it gives you a good starting spot. Another thing to mention with ChatGPT, it doesn't have a continuous memory. So as we go through a chat and we work our way down to the analyses and, oh, it's lunchtime, I'm going to step away, go get something to eat, come back. If that session times out, it does kind of kill that background data that you have in there. So you will have to kind of re-prompt and re-upload to get back to where you were, which can be a challenge if you're trying to do a more extensive analysis. So there are a few solutions to help with some of that continuity. One example is a plugin called Notable, which links to your ChatGPT directly and saves all of that Python code. So you don't have to go back through and revisit. You just spin the kernel back up when you come back from lunch, and it will rerun your analyses. You can also save your data directly to Notable, so that Fred Excel document I can upload to Notable, and now it will live there in perpetuity, and you don't have to go back through and rename the columns and get it back to where you were originally. Another option is something called Jupyter Notebooks, and through a kind of a similar vein, you have your Python saved here and can respin up different windows or different kernels and have some permanency to your data.
And in that case, you're connecting to the API as well, right?
And you are, yes, correct. Yep. So we do have data security challenges here as we integrate more and more cool features. You're trusting each one of those third parties with your data. So you do need to weigh that functionality that you're trying to get against potential security concerns. So that is where a Kingsmen AI lab solution would come into play, where Kingsmen could look at your use case, understand what you're trying to get out of it, and build you a solution that could be in a safe, secure sandbox. So you could prompt using customer-sensitive data, and there's not a risk of that leaking out to outside servers. The only thing you have to be concerned about is your own company security, which everyone should be concerned about anyway. So it does give a little bit more flexibility, especially for integrations with your existing systems. Getting data into ChatGPT is relatively simple when you're looking at a pretty simple data set that's all already combined. But if you want to do things like that regularly, you want something to happen every day at a certain time to start your day with information, that's where a custom solution really shines. So you do have to weigh kind of the pros and cons of your use case against what you're trying to do. So I think that's it. Are there any questions for me? Anything we missed?